back with Josh and Naci. You guys are awesome. Loved talking about marriage with you. And now we're going to go into family and how we can do family God's way. So just a quick question I wanted to ask you. What are some things that you guys do to keep God at the center of your family, even like with your kids, like practically? What does that look like for you guys?
I would say something we do every day. We call it Jesus time. And it's just something simple. We'll either put a song on and ask them to ask Holy Spirit to speak to them about the song or what it means, or we'll play show and tell with God. Just like little activities to get them. Something I'm passionate about is the voice of God because it changed my life. And so whatever I do with them is just something that's really quick, but always something around the voice of God where they get to practice listening to his voice. So they're either asking him a question and listening for his answer, or they're just thanking him for 3 things. That's what we did yesterday. Thank him for 3 things and tell him 3 things you love about him. Or, so just something simple like that. But another thing we do is at night, we all pray together. We have declarations we say around the dinner table. We'll share where we felt God's love that day. And even Indy, our youngest, is 2. She knows when she feels God's love. Like, she will say something that she did that day, and I'm like, wow, yeah, you did do that today. And, like, it'll be like she felt God's love during that activity or when she was doing that. And so I feel like because I did children's ministry for so long, one thing that bothered me was just I thought it was the church's job to teach kids about the Lord, but it's really the family's job. And so stepping down from children's ministry, the Lord challenged me. He said, this is a time for you to have your actions align with your heart. And so it's something I try to be intentional with the kids each day. It doesn't have, like I said, it doesn't have to be long, but just something little to let them know that he's real. He's always with us, and to keep just our eyes like fixed on him.
Okay, so I guess you kind of hit on this in the last episode, but you were saying how you were friends for so long before you got married that once you got married, it was like you were ready to have children. I wanted to ask, like, when did you know it was time? Did you feel like, were you prepared? Was it like unexpected? Were you thinking a lot about like finances? And I just want to know what that was like, making that decision to start your family.
Well, with our first one, it was a total surprise.
Okay.
We got married and it happened super quick. We had a baby like right before our year anniversary.
Literally 11 months later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
we got married in November and he was born in October, so.
Yeah. And so with,
we were pregnant within 2 months.
yeah, we were pregnant within 2 months, but, which was great. It's been so much fun and it's been adventure. It's been hard, but it's been rewarding. With our second one, it was like, we were like, oh, I think we're ready to have another one. I know. Actually, I do remember. Josh was always fine with just one kid. He was like, no, I think we're good. And then, but I come from a big family, so we had our second one a few years later, and like something.
And now you have 4.
And now we have 4, yes. And so our middle our second and third were planned, and our 4th was a surprise as well.
So, it's really easy to be like romantic with someone that, you're married with when you don't have any kids because you don't like have any distractions. But how do you guys stored like your alone time now that you have like 4 kids that like, if you're not attentive to them, like they won't survive? How do you keep them?
We lock the doors to our bedroom. I'm kidding.
We do. We literally do.
And lock ourselves in. No, what do you want to say? We definitely have to be intentional with each other, or it's easy for them to take.
Yeah, it's so easy to just manage the household and wake up, kids, work, put them in bed, hang out with them, put them in bed, and then just like be done. So it doesn't like just happen. We try to do date nights where, you know, because it's not just all about sex. Like, it's intimate, just like sitting down, putting the phones up. Like, she's really good at pulling out of me, like, tell me what you're thinking about right now. Because I'm always like, I can be somewhere else real easily. And so just sharing our hearts with each other, just being open, that's like real intimacy. Just guess what? Like, you can have sex without it. It's you know what I'm saying? It's not physical. You can be physical without intimacy as well. So, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah. And something that we started doing recently, which is one of my favorite times of the day, is the kids, we homeschool. And so, yes, we're all here all the time. But because we homeschool, they don't have to be up early for any reason. And so Josh and I have from 6 to 8 in the morning, whether we get out of bed at 6 or not. Just us. The kids, they can get up if they want to, but they got to stay in their rooms till 8. So we get to drink coffee, we get to visit, we, you know, get to spend time with the Lord. But also it's one of my favorite times that's when I'm like, okay, I can tell, like, I've learned he doesn't like to be asked deep questions at night before he goes to bed, because then he doesn't sleep good, because he's like, oh, why do I have to think about this now? And so all the stuff that I want to ask, I ask in the morning. I'm like, hey, you know, like, what's going on at work? I can tell something's bothering you, or, you know, just, and so, yeah, just making time for each other. And so our time right now is in the morning, and we try to go on a date night once a week. And sometimes, like, we'll have the kids watch a movie so we can just visit. Just like, you just gotta get creative.
You mentioned you homeschool. What led you to that decision? How do you feel about education and like the different kinds of education? If you could talk more about that.
Yeah, I will. So our oldest Jude, he started off in school, in public school in Kansas, really great school, but we didn't know what was going on, but we just noticed that when he would come home, just over time, like, the best way I could describe it is like his light was getting dimmer. And it was just like, we don't think it was anything, the school system or bullying, anything like that, but it was just like affecting him. And I don't know, our hunch was it's just probably being around other kids that aren't raised, like, they're exposed to things that ours aren't, you know, and just kind of, he's negotiating these two worlds he's living in. It's just a lot. So, anyway, it was like, we weren't blaming the schools. Neither one of us were homeschooled. We didn't know anything about it, but you just see the fruit of your child, and you're just like, I don't care what's really going on, but I know that something is not good for him there. So what can we do? Like, well, we'll gladly bring him. And so that's how we looked into it. And we got a lot of kind of, even your closest family, if they're not believers in homeschool, like, you'll get questioned. Like, you know what I mean? You have to really defend. You'll see, it's more popular now than it was when we started, but even before that was like way less popular. So, but it's good. Like, we think the world exposes them to too much too early, you know? And so they need to be exposed to those things. But when we, as their caregivers, caretakers, and the protectors of them, think it's right time for them to be exposed to that, and it needs to be by us, because that's then what they'll weigh everything against when they hear the world's version. Does that make sense? So that's the primary driver.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of ask you to expound on that a little bit, because the public school system can certainly expose kids to things early. So with you as the parents, what boundaries do you set? Where do you find the line between exposing them to certain things and telling them about the world from the perspective of just them being wiser and knowing what to expect, and protecting them from certain things? And at what age do you start telling them about more and more details of everything?
I think it's age dependent, and each kid is different as well. And so, I would say probably it depends who their social circles are, and you're like, or maybe even family, cousins, other things, and you're just like, hey, we know that kid's, there's a good chance our kid could hear about this, so we need to tell them. Does that make sense? And so, but I think it's child dependent. I think there's a maturity and just an ask, like if we know they can tell something's up, we're like, oh, we better sit down and talk about it. Does that make sense? But the whole idea is like, one of my big fears about homeschool is like, I don't want like a bubble kid, like, and like they're not wise, and it's like, come out of the 1950s into like this, what is going on? But it's a challenge. Like I think about that. I'm like, okay, no, those things aren't good, but I want them to know, and then how to like think about that, and what does God say about that? How do we feel about that? Ultimately, they're gonna come to the day where a lot of these their thoughts are their decisions and all these things, and so it's like at that point, you just hope.
Yeah, I would say that what he said, and also, our oldest just turned 13, and so we've told him about sex and just like boys and girls parts and all the stuff like that. I know sources books that even are, it's like for age appropriate, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12, and so we definitely have read those resources to our kids. It's from a great website called Moral Revolution, and so we did that, but with our son Jude, we took it a little deeper when he turned 13 and talked about kingdom versus world, and what God says in the kingdom and what the world says, and just how they contradict each other. And so it was a really powerful time.
I really love that you said that about how there's like a specific thing to talk about that's age appropriate, and it is based on your kid, because there may be kids that are just in different social circles, and they may just, based on their personality, they're a little more curious or might ask more questions, things like that. But what I've heard recently, I'm not a parent yet, but what I've learned that I want to do with my future family is like, it's not just a one-time talk. It's opening that conversation and having it be a progressive conversation as they're growing up, and it's becoming that safe place where it's not weird or awkward, but you are initiating those conversations and becoming the person that they know they can go to, like, with those questions. Thank you guys so much. We really love doing this. Thanks. They opened their home for us to record this podcast here today, and we're so thankful for that, for all the wisdom you shared. Do you want to say anything before we close? Okay. Awesome. Thank you guys. All right. Thanks for listening.